Well, once again, we're not in the car today. It's cold out. One of the things I'm proud of, proud of myself of over the last year is making more videos not in the car, really branching out, going to all different parts of the house. Um, Sometimes I've even sat in the back seat of my car, not in the driver's seat, in the passenger side of my car. Man, the only thing is we're kind of breaking the narrative that I live in my car when we do these videos outside the house. There's a small subset of haters of this channel who genuinely think I live in the car. I'd like to keep that myth going, but can't always. You can't win them all, I guess, or can you? So before I forget, we're gonna have a free. Oh yeah, we're gonna cover fear today. This is a major topic, and it might blow your mind. Should say that as well. But before we get to that, I wanted to mention we're gonna have a free group coaching call with me, Tim, next Wednesday, December 18th at 5 p.m. Eastern. Free group coaching call Wednesday, December 18th, 5 p.m. Eastern. If you'd like the Zoom link, I'll probably put it on a YouTube on one of these videos when I make it. But if you want to make sure you're included, just email me at info@radicalcounselor.com and I'll put you down there. This is something else too. Before we get to this excerpt, this is the thing, guys. Like, if you're new to this channel or maybe not new, those of you who are not new already know this, the vibe, right? I can make videos from all different parts of my life in the car or my daughter's room or in my living room where I am right now or my office. And I can, wear wacky clothes and be jokey and stuff like that. And the content we cover on this channel is more interesting than just about any LOA content you'll find on YouTube. And you might think, man, that guy, he's got a big ego. Maybe I do when it comes to this subject. But it's also just the damn truth. My stuff that I discuss here, I'm sorry, give me other channels you can put in the comments that can compare to the stuff that we just consistently talk about. Where I'm just yapping about in the car or in my daughter's room or in this chair, wherever. This is like intellectually stimulating, spiritually stimulating, psychologically stimulating stuff for some of you, hopefully, if you watch this channel. Like, I know it is. I know that this content is better than virtually anything else that's out there in this genre, this manifesting, law of attraction, law of assumption genre. And that's why I continue to make videos, in part, is to share these fascinating ideas. Because it's not about me being a goofball. Or at least it's not just about that. It's about the ideas we're talking about because they're really interesting. And listen, I'm not an intellectual, okay, or like this really intellectual guy. I'm not the kind of person who is like an academic or loves school. I dislike school. I'm someone who's curious, and a lifelong learner. And I think a lot of people who like this channel are the same way, right? But I do want to mention here that like the stuff we're talking about is interesting. Like it's so much more interesting than virtually any other manifesting channel I know of. And we're going to so many other sources that most people just don't even go to. Most of the law of assumption, law of attraction community doesn't even go to Kuwait. You know how dumb that is? As I always mention, it's not that I'm great. It's just most people talking about this stuff on YouTube are just, they're out to lunch. So we got a little bit of zing here. We got a little bit of liveliness. And today I want to read from the classic self-improvement book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. We did a podcast episode where I read from this a while ago. I'll put a link above if I can find it. A great excerpt from it about her talking about being Pollyannish. Some of you probably know that book and movie Pollyanna. This book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, fits right alongside our last video. I'll put a link above to that as well, where we're talking about Joseph Murphy and dealing with fear. This is another incredibly pragmatic, helpful book for dealing with fear. Because fear is a robber, right? To paraphrase somebody, I forget who. Fear is a thief. And if we look at it and confront it, or, as the subtitle here is dynamic techniques for turning fear, indecision, and anger into power, action, and love. If we start to do that, it's not about trying to be perfect usually. It's just about becoming better at it, becoming good at it. And if we can do that, our life really changes. So many people in this law of assumption, law of attraction space, especially like the SP relationship space, where, my partner Marvin Daniels and I work with a lot of these people now who are stuck because they can't deal with the fear of not of being in a relationship or not being in a relationship. They don't take the action necessary to change their inner state enough to get out of that fear cycle and to move on through the fear to the SP or a new relationship or a new sense of self-identity, a stronger self-concept. They don't do that because they're immersed and stuck in fear. So books like Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, as well as books like The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, which we were reading about last video, are really helpful for enabling us to work through fear, right? So, many of you have heard this before, but we got to hear this over and over again. What Susan Jeffers is talking about here in this short excerpt. A lot of people who struggle with issues with fear and manifestation issues, SP issues, it's because they can't deal with fear, as I said. And they think that, they're somehow exceptional having all this fear when they're not exceptional at all. One of the points of the book that Jeffers makes is that we all have fear that we have to move through. And success is predicated by moving through it, and failure is predicated by not moving through it a lot of the time. She's talking about celebrities and people who have had a lot of success. And she says, you may think they are lucky because they aren't afraid to put themselves out there. Not so. They had to push through a tremendous amount of fear to get where they are today. And they are still pushing. Those who have successfully dealt with fear all their lives seem to have known, consciously or unconsciously, the message in this book. You must feel the fear and do it anyway. A very successful friend of mine, a self-made man who allowed nothing to stop him along the way, pondered the title of my course one day, nodded and said, yes, I guess that is the way I've always lived my life, without consciously realizing that's what I've been doing. I can't remember not being afraid. But it never occurred to me that fear would prevent me from taking the risks necessary to get what I wanted. I just went ahead and did what I had to do to make my ideas work, despite the fear. This is what so many people who get into these law of assumption ideas miss. They think, I'm going to get into a state where I'm fearless, right? And they're like, I'm going to persist in that state, this end state, right? And it's just totally unrealistic for the vast, 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 vast majority of us. You have to move through the resistance, through the fear, and through other feelings like shame and anger and, all these difficult emotions in order to manifest more of what you want in your life externally. That's how it works. And that is so easily misconstrued in law of assumption as well as law of attraction circles. Jeffers goes on to write, if you have not been successful in dealing with fear, you probably never learned the fear truths and interpreted fear as a signal to retreat rather than as a green light to move ahead. You have tended to play with those when-then games I mentioned earlier. All you have to do to find a way out of your self-imposed prison is to retrain your thinking. A first step in retraining your thinking is to say the fear truths at least 10 times a day for the next month. As you will shortly discover, retraining faulty thinking takes constant repetition. Knowing the fear truths is not enough. You have to keep feeding them to yourself until they become a part of your being, until you start to reverse your behavior and move toward your desired goals rather than retreating. There will be more later about why repetition is important. For now, just trust me and repeat the fear truths over and over again. I'll now read to you the fear truths that she includes in this book. But this paragraph I just read obviously ties together what we're always talking about. She's talking about suggestion and what our auto suggestion, what we automatically are suggesting to ourselves, and how we have to consciously retrain ourselves and feed ourselves good suggestions to counteract all the bad ones that we inadvertently have been feeding ourselves all these years in regards to fear and self-betterment, right? If you're familiar with this channel at all, familiar at all with Emile Coué, you'll resonate immediately with all of this. Let me just read to you these fear truths that she shares in this book. If you're familiar, obviously, with affirmations and Coué and what we always talk about here, you do not have to use these fear truths, but they certainly can be valuable and are definitely worth hearing here and reminding yourself of perhaps again and again. Here are Susan Jeffers' 5 truths about fear. Number 1, the fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. Number 2, the only way to get rid of the fear of doing something is to go out and do it. Number 3, the only way to feel better about myself is to go out and do it. Number 4, not only am I going to experience fear whenever I'm on unfamiliar territory, so is everyone else. And number 5, pushing through fear is less frightening than living with the underlying fear that comes from a feeling of helplessness. That last point reminds me of what Claire Weeks, the great psychotherapist that I've done several podcast episodes about, something she always talks about. She says, the worst moment is that moment of helplessness where you just feel paralyzed with fear. That's worse than anything that's going to happen when you actually take action in the 3D. This is the stuff. This is the obvious atom stuff that is not discussed nearly enough in the law of assumption, law of attraction space. We will be discussing it and ways you can relax and feel better in our free group session next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. If you would like a free SP consultation, if you have romantic relationship issues you would like to resolve, I will put the questionnaire that Marvin and I have below that you have to fill out. And if you fill it out, Marvin and I will give you a free, no pressure consultation to help you out and to get it so you start to resolve those romantic issues that have been bothering you for a long time. As always, you know where to reach me, info@radicalcounselor.com. Until next time, feel the fear and fucking do it anyway.